My name is Miguel Farias, and I'm the director of the Brain, Belief and Behavior Lab at Coventry University in England. I'm here to tell you briefly about our project, which is called Neuromodulation of Paranormal Beliefs. And the background to this project is really simple. Think about what cognitive psychologists tell us about how we process information about the world. There are two major ways of doing this. One is in an intuitive way, and the other is analytical. An example of intuitive processing information would be falling in love, particularly if it's love at first sight. There's lots of things happening very quickly, and most of the time happening in an unconscious way. On the other hand, an analytical way of processing information would refer to buying a house, for example, in which you have to weigh the pros and cons, how much money you have to buy this place, where can you buy it exactly, that sort of thing. Now, what is interesting about applying this model of dual information processing to beliefs, supernatural and paranormal beliefs in particular, is that in the last 7-8 years, a number of experimental social psychologists and cognitive psychologists have come up with studies suggesting that people who believe in the paranormal or supernatural are much more prone to be intuitive thinkers and to be lower on analytical thinking. They have even done experimental manipulations showing that if you think more analytically in a certain context, you will tend to believe less in the supernatural. So we decided to test this in a causal way by using neuromodulation, transcranial direct current stimulation in particular, which is a harmless, non-invasive method in which you apply electrodes. So it's an electric current that you apply to a particular part of the brain. In our case, we were interested in targeting the right inferior frontal gyrus, which we know it is associated with cognitive inhibition. Again, a process which inhibits your natural impulses or intuition. So we did this with a large sample at our lab in England. And what we saw is that although by using this technique of neuromodulation, it did have an effect in terms of cognitive inhibition, it had no effect whatsoever on the strength of paranormal and supernatural beliefs. We also looked at other measures of intuitive analytical thinking, and there was no correlation whatsoever with levels of belief in the paranormal. So we did a second study in which we came up with a training program to increase your preference for either intuition or analytical thinking. And again, what we verified that although we could change people's levels of preference, this had no influence whatsoever on people's levels of strength of paranormal belief. So we have now these two studies, and we've published a third study showing that against some of our previous evidence, particularly coming from the US, there seems to be no association whatsoever between dual processing, particularly an intuitive style of thinking, and paranormal and supernatural beliefs. Now, we are very grateful to the BIAL Foundation for having sponsored this project, and if I were to define in a word the charisma of the BIAL Foundation, I would say that it is unique.